Hi, everyone, and welcome to our monthly webcast called ChanceTALK, where Sam Savage and I talk about different risk management applications, share stories, case studies, and answer your questions. So this is, if you're watching this live, this is a great opportunity to type in the question, whether you're watching on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. Ask the question and we will try and respond to it. So Sam, it's been a while since we've last done that. How have you been? What's been happening? How are you?
So much stuff. Probably the biggest thing is we have a new puppy. and so that's a whole adventure, like almost like having a new kid, but it's great fun. But there have been just a ton of things going on. I mean, the Military Operations Research Society, MORS, started a community of practice of probability management. I've been out to West Point, the military academy, exciting stuff out there. Working closely with people at FAIR, the factor analysis of information risk. And really, and too many other things. It'll come out in our discussion. What's fantastic, Alex, is that this is so unscripted. I mean, we've got so much to talk about here. It's always kind of an adventure, and I'm glad we managed to chat a few minutes before we started. But I mean, I've had some pretty big thoughts related to risk management in general, and I keep coming back to that quote of yours. So most of your listeners probably know what FAIR is, right? And I think I should just say FAIR is an ontology for dealing with information risk, but really it would apply to any risk. But an ontology is like an accounting standard. So an accounting standard would say profit equals revenue minus cost, right? Now, that doesn't tell you how to do the calculations. Profit equals revenue. When you think profit equals revenue, you think numbers, you think Excel. No, but that's not where we are in risk management. It's too premature. So the SIPMath standard plays the role of the Hindu Arabic numerals. Oh, that's a great way to do accounting with Hindu Arabic numerals. Yeah, you didn't think there was any other way? Sure. Before Fibonacci brought them to Italy in 1199, you still had profit, you still had revenue, you still had cost. Yeah, but what they were doing was racking it up on counting sticks or Roman numerals or all sorts of horrible ways. So recently, a big push for us is combining FAIR with SIPMath. And I've been working on a set of articles with Engwi Yo of Kaiser, who has actually done this, John Button of Gartner, and we have started. We have like a trilogy of articles, and we start with this quote of yours, which you should share my screen here now, because it has led to all sorts of thoughts. Oh wait, I need to share. No, there it is.
You're sharing. It will appear in a second.
Okay. Right. So again, quote from you, from a board member of a big company. Why do we receive performance data on Tuesday and risk management data on Wednesday? Shouldn't risk and reward be reported together? Of course they should. Imagine an investment firm. Oh, we have a department of risk management to manage the investments that lose money. And then we have a department of revenue management to manage the assets that make money. It's utterly ridiculous to separate these two. When Harry Markowitz, who passed away recently, sadly, brought us modern portfolio theory, he brought us the risk-return trade-off. And this has led me to a recent snide comment about risk management. So Richard Feynman was a phenomenal physicist who helped build the atomic bomb. And he has many famous quotes, but one of them is, if you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't. Here's my version of that. If you have a risk management department, you don't understand risk management. You can't have a risk management department. No, it's risk and reward. They're all together. As soon as you divide one off.
That's very deep. That's very deep, Sam, because we've been pushing for this for ages, and it's kind of true. As soon as you separate risk management into a standalone department, you're kind of going against the whole purpose of risk-based decision making and performance management and optimization.
So, well, I think you brought up risk registers, all right? And
yeah. Well, before we dive into that, let me because this quote in front, I think that's a nice segue into a little thing that I wanted to share. It does say Alex Sidorenko, the founder of Risk Awareness Week and a chief risk officer at a mining company in Europe, which I think is a good time as any to make an announcement. I was acting in the role of group head of risk, insurance and internal control as of today, but tomorrow I'm actually starting as an in-house group head of risk, insurance and internal control. Finally, all the paperwork is finalized, and as of tomorrow, I'll be a CRO, I guess you can call it, of a major European mining company. Well, the group company, the head office in Switzerland, but the mine itself is in Brazil. And this is what I've been kind of busy in the last few moments, trying to apply risk-based thinking and trying to integrate risk information into performance management, into planning. And I think today we'll try and share, time permitting, we'll try and share as many of these stories as possible. But one, and I'm gonna do a segue kind of for you to pick up on the risk register, and I'm gonna hide your screen so you can look up the actual model that you want to pull up.
Yes, thank you.
In the meantime, because one of the things in the new role, and even though I'm not a big fan of risk registers in general, it is a sensible format for summarizing and communicating information to the external world, to the board of directors, to the insurance companies, to external auditors. So there's always an audience for a risk register. But what I certainly didn't want to do.
No, but Alex, I just want to interrupt you. The risk register is fine if it contains uncertainties. The thing wrong with risk register is it's using single numbers.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say, is that unlike 99% of the other companies on the planet, I didn't want to turn this risk register into a profanity. I didn't want to use colors, and I saw a paper from Oliver Wyman today, and basically the message of the paper from Oliver Wyman said we should stop calling our risks close sizes: small, medium, high, large. We should stop using t-shirt sizes and move to numbers. But not only we should move to numbers, we should move to distributions and Monte Carlo simulations, not just single point estimates.
Right.
And Sam, this is I think where you can pick up with the case study, because I've actually tried quite a few examples. It takes a little while to load. For the screen to load, but it will load soon. I've actually tried quite a number of different technical solutions, how I can quantify the risk register, that it's both interactive and very quick and doesn't
Yeah,
require any special software for the executives to
sure,
see and
sure.
play with it. And this is where I stopped. So over to
Okay, great.
you.
Well, first, please send me the Oliver Wyman article, right? Send me that link.
Sure.
Because let me ask you this, Oliver Wyman. If you represent things as uncertainties, how are you going to add them together? Oh, you're not. You're going to have a giant simulation of every risk in the organization that'll collapse under its own weight like a sandcastle. You need SIPs, the Hindu Arabic numerals of uncertainty, that let you simulate the risks separately and then add them up. So now this is an operational risk model, and it does take a little while to think through this. But the first thing is there are safety risks and reliability risks. Let me run you down the left side here. Think of these as segments of gas pipe. Any segment could blow up or leak or do some bad thing. And the bad thing, actually, it would do two bad things. It would do a bad safety thing, someone gets hurt, and a bad reliability thing, someone doesn't have gas in their house anymore. Now, traditionally people said, oh, well, we need to monetize. Let's see, 1 hour of outage, or let's do it the other way. One injury is worth $1 million, and that's equal to 1,000 hours of outage. And we put it all down to numbers. I completely disagree with that approach. You just can't come up with those things. You can't have weightings there. It's nonlinear. It's just all kinds of stuff. So right away, it's important to see that we are showing a picture of your residual risk. Now, the horizontal axis is safety risk. The vertical axis is reliability risk. If you ever got down there, you would have no risk of either form. The various herringbones, we call this the herringbone model, are where you get for different budgets of mitigation. 2 dots, the blue dot and the green dot. The green, so now let's look at what we mean by mitigating the risk. So first thing, the segments. Oh, I can replace a segment. Here's the cost of replacing it, $3 million. And then each segment has an entire SIP library of outcomes. So if I go to the SIP library, oh, here's the safety risk for the first segment. The safety, and of course, it goes down 100 times or 1,000 times or whatever you have in your model, right? If you follow this way over to the right, oh, now I get the reliability risks for each one. So each thing in the risk register, the safety goes back, like 1,000 times. The reliability goes back 1,000 times. Now, if let's look at my cost here. I'm comparing at the top manual mitigation, which is dumb, versus optimal mitigation. And the premise is, who is looking at this? Well, you've got the chief financial officer looking at it, and they're saying, oh, $70 million worth of mitigation. Who else is looking at it? You've got the safety person looking at it, and they say, I want my safety risk as low as possible. And you've got the reliability person looking at it, a different person. Look, risk is in the eye of the beholder, everybody. It always is. The word risk by itself doesn't make sense. How many times do I have to say it? Is there a risk of IBM stock going down next week? Heck no. I've shorted IBM. The risk for me is that it goes up, right? So this herringbone diagram shows us, first of all, the green dot is, oh, I think I will go in by hand and I'm going to replace segment 3. So I go to segment 3, way over on the left, and I'm just going to put in, replace it. Click. Oh, did you see the green dot move? Now, first of all, notice our cost went up to 77 million, right? But let me undo. Okay, there's undo, redo. Okay, so that's the first thing. That you can see the dot moving around. Now, the second thing is, this leaves you with a lot of risk. If I optimized using stochastic optimization, which has been invented for this stuff, then if I spend my 70 million, but I optimize, you'll notice it takes me along this herringbone. So let me crank it up. I want more reliability. Puts me way down here. So reliability means I want to be as low as possible. Takes me here. Let's go to safety. Then I want to be as far left as possible. And so
there's a good question for you from Jamie.
Yeah. Yes. Can I define stochastic optimization? Indeed. It means optimize in the face of uncertainty. So, I mean, a classic example would be buying insurance. You know, I can spend, what's the optimal thing to do to prevent the loss of your house by fire? Turns out fire insurance is a pretty good deal, right? For example, there's something called linear programming, which is a way to optimize. Trying to allocate resources without doing it mathematically is like trying to move your luggage without using wheels. This was invented at the end of World War II, and everybody does it. Planes are routed this way. Stores are restocked this way. Linear programming is at the heart of operations research. And there's a stochastic version of it, which says, let's do it in the face of uncertainty. Okay? And in fact, there really are now what I call the 3 R's of dealing with uncertainty. Like the 3 R's of, of grade school: reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? The 3 R's of dealing with uncertainty are recognize uncertainty. Otherwise, you're dealing with the flaw of averages. You got to recognize it. The second one is reduce the uncertainty as much as you can. That's the value of information and Doug Hubbard's applied information economics. That's what that part is. And the third, so it's recognize the uncertainty, reduce the uncertainty, and respond to the uncertainty. Do something. Don't just sit there. Make a decision. So what we're doing
That's
here.
really cool. I'm going to attempt writing an article on the 3 R's because I think it's quite nice and memorable and really conveys the message.
And this has just come out of recent work I've done that I'm dealing with a group of people for whom this is their first exposure, and what are we really doing? And I'm going to write a blog on it myself. We'll put our heads together, see what we can do on this. But look, every point on this line down here, let's take the risk guy. I mean, the residual safety risk, the safety risk guy. The safety risk guy says, oh, I like this point better than that point because look how much safer it is. And the reliability guy says, oh, I like this point better than that point because look how much more reliable it is, right? In risk terms, this point stochastically, oh, I see that the darn thing is missing, stochastically dominates this point. You'd be nuts not to want this one over that one. Now, remember, all of this
stochastically dominates, just for Jamie's sake, stochastically dominates, it means it's better in every uncertain scenario that we've tested under the uncertain assumptions that we originally...
No, wait. It actually means, it means it's better for any observer. Okay? So if I take a point, okay, hold on a second. If I take a point, for example, up here, it has better safety than this. So the safety person says, ooh, I want that one rather than that one. But the reliability person says, heck no, I like that one better. And what one way of thinking, here's another way of thinking of the dominance principle. Just with a single dimension. Oh, it has a better average outcome and lower risk. No rational person would pick the one that's dominated by the other. So there's a lot going on in this picture. There's one more dimension to show. So first of all, we have optimized. And for those who are familiar with my example from Royal Dutch Shell, we did stochastic optimization to find the efficient trade-off curves in that space. So we have a budget of 70 million. If you're going to spend 70 million, don't do this stupid thing up here. Look at all possibilities along this axis and just a second, and choose among them, right? But it's going to be an arm wrestle. That's okay, because safety and reliability, I don't know how you monetize those in a really dependable way. When you're done, hey, when you're done with all this, if you pick this point, and we do it through negotiations, parties with different interests. We do it with negotiations. And when we're done, we will be able to say, well, you are apparently placing, $1 million value on an injury and $100,000 per hour on reliability. Now, one more thing I have to do. If I change the budget, I move to a different line because there's a third person in the room, the CFO. And so the three of them disagree. The CFO says, I don't want to spend anything on risk. Nothing. And these two people say, the heck with you, we've got to spend money on risk. And the three of them discuss it and arrive at, maybe we get to, 80,000 or whatever. We arrive at this, and we also arrive at where along the herringbone we go. And it is a risk register. It's just that everything in the register has 1,000 trials behind it or 10,000 trials behind it. They are Monte Carlo trials. Thank you, Oliver Wyman. We're going to stop measuring risk in terms of T-shirts and measure it in terms of SIPs. But they're we're not using the word risk. We've got safety, reliability. And maybe the cost is uncertain too. Doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a very good kind of more in-depth example. And Vivian asked the question, which I'm going to respond to now, because she asked a really good question. This is something I've actually done a couple of years ago.
Oh, cool.
When the legal team approached the risk team asking us to help them quantify the risks. And there are basically two approaches, but there's one caveat that I wanted to start with. Simulating legal risk or compliance risks or legal risks, it's all in the same approach bucket. The first caveat, the first question is, why do you think you need to do that? Because if it's just to prioritize different high-level legal issues, then that's fine and that's reasonable, and there's a very simple methodology for doing that. However, as I've been educated by our head of legal back in the day, is that legal risks don't actually live in the risk register because nobody puts them on paper. Because as soon as you put something on paper, that becomes a potential court case, a litigation. So legal risks are one of those things similar with taxation risks. Everybody kind of talks about it, but nobody really talks about the actual issues. So it's a little bit of a
Alex, similar to what risk? You just said another kind of risk?
Taxation.
Oh, yes.
It's basically different strategies for companies to optimize their taxes. Nobody's in their right set of mind will actually put their tax strategies on paper in the form of a risk register and, show the probability of non-compliance with the tax code and non-compliance with the local legislation.
Right.
So legal risks are a weird animal in the way that it's unlikely that you would do them properly. Like, it's unlikely that you would be in the position where you would actually quantify the true risk exposure from a legal risk and put it on paper. So therefore, most of the people use a simpler methodology for prioritizing legal risks. And that could be as simple as creating a risk register where you have either a Bernoulli distribution or Poisson distribution on the probability or frequency of a legal claim, and that's a distribution. And you would have a log normal or Weibull or Perth distribution on the consequences, the costs associated with the settlement, or the impact on the cash flow, or impact on the EBITDA, whatever your financial metric is. And then you would just simulate for each of the high-level legal issues what the potential, VAR or conditional VAR could be you'd probably end up using conditional var anyway, because usually legal risks are very fat-tailed, as in, nothing happens, and then you suddenly lose 10% of your revenue in the settlement.
And by the way, Alex, just for the record, conditional var turns out to be the ideal metric to limit with stochastic linear programming.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone knows Stanislaw Jurajevich, a finance professor at Stony Brook University. But I had discovered this stuff on my own, and others have done it, and he's a great proponent of this. So it turns out that conditional var is kind of like the ideal metric to use. And Alex, that was fantastic. I had not heard that rationale, but I have a wonderful story that fits with that. Wonderful story. So there was a famous operations research professor at Colorado School of Mines named Gene Woolsey. Passed away, sadly, but wonderful, illustrative career. And I once heard him give a lecture. He was an operations research professor. And he talked about how in Colorado somewhere, they were going to build a toxic waste dump someplace. And they called in the operations researchers to decide where to put the thing. Okay. They all had their methods. Again, probably using linear programming or the total number of people affected, blah, 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 blah. That's not what Gene Woolsey did. Gene Woolsey took out a newspaper ad. He said, on such and such a date, we are going to announce the location of the toxic waste dump on the steps of the county courthouse. So goes down to the courthouse that day. There's a big crowd of people around. And he pulls up a map of the county. And he says, we're going to put the waste dump here. And he points to the map. And a bunch of people jump up and down and scream and shout, we'll sue you if you put it there. He says, okay, we won't put it there. We'll put it here. And another group jumps up and down and says, we'll sue you if you put it there. And finally, he finds a point where no one jumps up and down and says they're going to sue him. He says, okay, it's going there. That's Gene Woolsey for you in a nutshell. Yes.
But it illustrates a very important point, is that some risks are not really up for quantification. There's a different strategy of dealing with them altogether.
Well, you know what? He did quantify it. Doug Hubbard says you can measure anything. He did measure it. But he didn't measure it the way you're used to being measured. The number of people who jump up and down, they'll say you sue it if you put it there. That's a number. You wait till that number gets to 0. But back to the whole legal thing. The legal thing fits with this herringbone. I didn't show it on the picture, but everybody knows which pipes. Oh my gosh, if we replace that pipe, we're going to disrupt some town somewhere and we'll get sued. So what you need is, in effect, an interactive map of what's going on so that you can build in all these other things that you don't want to write down. You're entitled to not write them down because you're absolutely right. As soon as you acknowledge a risk, oh, you knew this could happen and you did it anyway, right?
That's a good point. Maybe we should do like a whole webcast on the unusual to quantify, or kind of uncommon risks to quantify. Because the other thing I was going to say on the legal and compliance risks is that if for some reason you decided to deep dive into the risk and you wanted to understand the actual nature of the risk exposure, then a bow tie with obviously Monte Carlo sitting on top of bow tie is quite a useful mechanism for doing that. And in fact, I've got a whole article, because this is literally the methodology I've used. I've used the risk register to quantify Poisson distribution times Perth and log normal, and I've used bow ties for some selected risks. I've got a whole very long article on that. So Vivian, when we finished, I'll just paste the link below your comment.
That does make sense, Alex. Oh, what are the units of measurement for safety and reliability? That I'm going to get to that question in a second.
Yeah.
But back to your bow tie and that sort of thing, which is a great way to go after this. When a company is actually being sued, they will often do kind of a simulation along your lines to decide whether to settle or not. All right? So we know people are modeling these legal risks. Okay? Now I want to address the question, what are the units of reliability and safety? My first response is, what do you want them to be? But that's too glib. Let me in particular, let me take them both. Oh my gosh. Let me take them both. Let's start with reliability. So with reliability, and let's go to electricity, not gas. And let's talk about measuring hours of outage for electricity. So hours of outage, what are you going to do? Put $100 per hour? Well, no, it's for some community. $1 million per hour of outage. That doesn't work at all. Because the first hour, we're out of electricity. So what? Maybe it is $1 million. People are caught in elevators, all kinds of bad stuff. You get to the third hour or the fourth hour. So the first hour is worth $1 million. Second hour is worth $1 million. Third hour is worth $1 million. Fourth hour, the food goes bad in your freezer, your refrigerator. Oh my God, that's worth $20 million. You get a very non-linear response to the number of hours. And you need to take that into account. Here's where the flaw of averages comes in. Oh, our average number of hours out is 2 hours. That costs $2 million. Is that the average risk? Is that the average cost? No, because there's a chance of going for 6 hours, and that's you're adding 2 more hours at 10 million each. Oh my God. So the average penalty is much greater than the penalty of the average outage. Now let's go to safety risk. So, ultimately it's like, oh, how many fatalities? And by the way, you do need to monetize. Ultimately, you have to have a cost on a human life, right? I mean, you have the cost for the outage, but it's a very crazy nonlinear cost, because once the food goes bad in the freezer, right, that it gets much worse. And then even worse things happen. I don't know. Hospitals have to shut down and everything because they run out of fuel in their generators. With safety risk, if anything, it's maybe a little easier because we've kind of monetized. We've said, look, the value of a human life is maybe between $5 and $10 million. And you can say human life is priceless. But if you valued it at $100 million, well, we'd have to stop driving automobiles because you're going to cause $100 million worth of fatalities. But I have another point to make about this. Fatalities is a bad metric because they're rare. So you really need some kind of surrogate, like, let's take gas pipes, which can blow up and kill people. They do it very, very rarely. When they do it, it's very bad. So maybe you need something like gas leaks. So there are a lot of gas leaks. And suppose 1 in 1,000 results in a fatality. Well, you can measure that, right? Okay, so our safety risk is number of gas leaks, and we have a whole bunch of them. All right? The law of large numbers. A similar thing shows up in the game of soccer, or what the rest of the world calls football versus basketball. I remember watching the World Cup a couple decades ago. It was France versus Italy. And I forget, one of the teams absolutely dominated. They had possession of the ball. Their passes were being completed. They were fantastic. And the team that dominated lost 1-0 because the other team got lucky, right? This is my problem. They should move the goalposts about 3 meters further apart. I'm going to see scores like, 25-36. Like in basketball, you don't have too much doubt, right? This team dominated. So when you have something really rare, like a score in football, the results are not as reliable. Okay, so I know I got off on kind of a long-winded response, but you need to think hard about how you model these things.
That's a very good point. Adrian is asking for a sample risk register with some common risks. Again, once we finish, I'll share a couple of links. There's one link where, I don't know, Sam, if you remember, a few years back, you actually did a demonstration, a live demonstration on how to build a stochastic risk register from scratch in SIPMath. And so I'll share that video. I still have that, it's on channel. And I do have somewhere a template of generic risks that any company or most companies on the planet have. So I'll share that as well. What else? We are 42 minutes into the webcast today. Anything else you wanted to share? Let me quickly run the link for the webinars that you have going on.
Thank you.
ChanceTALK, Sam, once a month or once every 2 months, you run webinars for small groups where you kind of deep dive into application of quantitative risk analysis, and this is a great place for people to learn and to ask questions and to kind of figure out how to apply the ideas that we're discussing in their own companies. And the other exciting thing we have is, of course, this year's Risk Awareness Week. Sam is going to do 2 workshops, at least, maybe more if you want. At least 2 workshops, which I'll populate to the website very soon. And the registration is already open, and you can sign up for it. In fact, it's the last day of the month, which means there is a free option, by the way. But it's the last day of the month, which means tomorrow the paid ticket will go up, I think, $50 or something. So use this opportunity if you're going to purchase the ticket anyway. And most of the people are going to purchase the ticket anyway because there's just too much valuable content there. And if you want the CPD certificate of attendance as well. So Risk Awareness Week, it's going to be going virtual in October. And what else is happening in October?
Oh, yes. The probabilitymanagement.org is having a summit at Highmark Health in Pittsburgh. And it will be both, it'll be in-person invitation only for a few people. It will all be virtual. And, we're going to have people, I'll be there, Doug Hubbard will be there, Engwee Yo from Kaiser, who, and they've done wonderful stuff now tying SIT math to FAIR and claim to have discovered about $20 million worth of value. If you don't understand your risks, then you don't understand what to spend on insuring those risks, right? And not all insurance makes sense. Some makes a lot of sense, some doesn't. You really have to understand your own risks. You can't rely on the insurance salesman to tell you what your risks are.
Listen, you have no idea. We really need to do a separate session on insurance. This is literally what I'm doing right now, and it's such a struggle to make risk engineers and brokers and insurance underwriters understand the actual risk they're trying to insure instead of just kind of doing this blanket approach.
Absolutely.
To
let's make it our next session, because I have all kinds of ideas on that.
That's great, because I've just placed Yellow Fleet Insurance, and I'm in the process of placing PDBI, environmental, third-party liability insurances for the plant, and it's a non-stop lesson, I think, in misunderstanding and miscalculating risk.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Sam, please do not disconnect just now. Let me end the session for everybody, but you stay online just for a few seconds more.
You bet.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in the next webcast. Subscribe to the Risk Academy channel to see the notifications, and don't forget to visit theprobabilitymanagement.org for blogs, books, and webinars.